Okay, folks, today I am going to give you an I'm going to give you my version of an abbreviated version of the user's guide for beginners. There are 228 pages in the December 1st, 2016 user guide, and I'm going to try to highlight some of the more important key aspects if you're just beginning as a new user, and I'll show you what you can afford to skip over and not focus on to begin with to avoid, information overload, so to speak. So that's the intent of this video, is just to give you a very brief overview. First thing you want to know about this user's guide is that to maximize your use of it, you'll notice that if you scroll to the second page at the very bottom, it says you can click on a chapter title to go there, and you can click on back to contents at the bottom of each page to return to the table of contents. So just as an example, if I wanted to go to the signal testing section, I could click on it and go straight to signal testing, and then click on back to contents to go back to the table of contents. So that's important to know about if you have a digital version of it. I happened to print it out. I took this document, a PDF document, on a flash drive to Office Depot and had them do double-sided copies and bind it, in a spiral binder, and it cost me like $35 in black and white, but it was well worth it when I was first starting out, just so I could mark it up. You don't have to do that. It's just personal preference. I found a very good investment to spend the $35 to have a physical copy printed out so I could mark it up. But if you want to use the digital version on your computer, I want to show you how you can effectively navigate it and maximize your use of it. If you go up to the Edit tab, this is the Adobe Reader 11, version 11. And I'm going to go ahead and click on Advanced Search. And let's say I want to find everything that relates to remote mode. And then I'll search on it. And it will load all of the remote mode sections, and I can click on something and it'll take me to that page. And it will highlight it. So that's one way to use it, is the advanced search. I like this one slightly better because it gives you a little bit of a context. I'll go ahead and close this window and show you a different way to search it. You can click on Edit and Find, and you can select remote mode or type in remote mode, and hit next, or let's see here, I'll click on enter, and it'll take me to every situation where remote mode comes up. I'm going to scroll through it real quickly so you can just see it. Okay, so that's another way to just scroll through and see where remote mode is mentioned. Okay, so that's that. I'll close that window, go back to page 1. Alright, so that's that feature. I'm going to go through this real quickly. Be prepared to pause if you want to read in more detail from the video, but I'm going to go real briefly about what I think is important to know about when you're first starting. You'll notice that the pages that have changed from the October 21st version have the blue triangles at the top, so that's important to know about. If you've printed out a previous version, you can probably print out the blue triangles and just replace the pages. So actually what I want to do is start at the end, because there's some interesting things that you need to be aware of right off the bat, and that is precautions for users. Um, you want to be aware of, even necessarily before you even buy your equipment, uh, when and how to use your hardware. So this has general precautions that you need to know about as far as use. Whether or not you could use frequency generation systems while you're pregnant. That's recommended as a never kind of thing to do. You just don't ever want to do it while you're pregnant. There's different reasons for it, and we're not going to get into that. But, if you have a pacemaker or defibrillator, you want to make sure that you use remote mode only. So anyway, review this when you get a chance, because that's important. And then, of course, the legal disclaimer and notice. This is an experimental device. We're not doctors here. We're just experimenting with frequencies. And so everybody's experience is unique and everybody's situation is unique. If you have a problem, it's always best to go consult your licensed healthcare professional. So, this is the classic disclaimer for any kind of device that is experimental in nature, and this is a software license. I'm going to scroll back up. These are the folks that, this is an acknowledgement of all the people that are involved in making Spooky 2 available to the world. So that's good to know right off the bat who your core team members are. Alright, so I'm going to go back to page 1, back to contents. And now I'm going to scroll through very briefly what I think are highlights to new users to pay attention to. Okay, so this is going to go really fast, but again, this is the abbreviated version. Alright, so I'm just going to start scrolling. I've already highlighted in yellow what I think is important to pay attention to. First thing, of course, on page 1 is the important information about your part in reading the document and the guide, because this is what's really going to help you. Most people are starting out with some form of impairment of mental capacity, and we can understand that it's difficult to absorb all this technical information and the variety of ways you can set up your system, but it's still important to read the guide. This is where your most reliable information will be. I keep repeating that because there's information scattered all over the net, all over YouTube, all over everywhere. But if you focus on the user's guide when you're first starting out, this is where your most reliable information will be. And you find that you won't be chasing your tail or going on a wild goose chase figuring out how to run equipment when maybe there's links that are outdated, and things change really fast with spooky hardware and software, so it's really hard to keep everything up to date, and just be aware of that. So rely on your user's guide for your best information to start. And the whole point of having this extensive user's guide is for people to read it, as opposed to asking questions that are already answered here, because it'll drain the team resources. The team is busy improving upon the next generation of the new software that's going to be out in 2 months. So it's important that we allow them to do their work while we are reading the user's guide and using the equipment. So let's go. Important advice. This is important. Drink pure water. These spookies sing. This is about the Spectrum and overnight carrier sweeps. Don't mess with the generator controls, on the actual generator. System requirements. Windows 7 seems to be optimum right now. Based on current information, you need to have 2.0 or greater. If you really want to try to do it on a Mac, you can look at Boot Camp. Here's another feature of the software. If you hover over one of these hot links, it'll take you to a website. So that's a feature of the hot link there. I'm going to go ahead and close that. Oops. Alright, oops. Oops. I gotta start over. I gotta edit that. I'm gonna have to go back and edit that. Anyway. Okay, so let's see here. Okay. Okay, where am I? There, okay. I'm going to keep scrolling here. Here's what's new and improved. This is a kind of a synopsis of where it started. You know, about 3.5 years ago was the first release, so you can see how effectively primitive it was at the time, you know, but it's highly advanced now. This is the Rife system, you know, the components, the generator, the remotes, the boost, the hand cylinders. This is the Spooky Central. This is the warning. You can read that. This is how you connect your generators. This is the PC connection. It's important to use a hub for multiple generators, and I would highly recommend a powered hub. This happens to be a 28 port hub, but you know, I have a 13 port hub that's plenty good, and it's $20, so it's definitely worth the investment. Connecting a remote. You have the white remote, the black remote. You can read this and see that the white remote goes into the BN Bio North port over here, and the black remote, which I've never used yet, goes into the MN Magnetic North. Alright, we'll get to that later. This is an advanced user section, so we're not going to worry about that. If you want to use hand cylinders, that's page 14. If you want to modify ones that you already have, you can look at this. This is the section on Spooky Central. Right here. You can read that. Alright, this is installing the software. This is important to read. It takes you step by step on what you're going to see on your screen, so all you got to do is follow this. This is a very important one. If you're installing over the top of an older version, you know, you want to not click on this close button, otherwise it's probably not going to install properly. Okay, this is continuing the process. This is how you can run it in test mode. We're on page 25 now. As you can see, I'm going really fast. This is step-by-step directions on installing. Okay, now we get to the first screen after you finished installing your drivers. This is your presets tab. It goes into information about what's on the presets tab. Let's see here. The advanced view, you want to definitely tick on the advanced view to show all your tabs. Simple view is unticked. Scroll down, and the advanced view is that you got this ticked and you got more tabs. This is the definitions, you know, your terminology. Frequency sets or programs. So these frequencies are a set of frequencies which will comprise that program abdominal inflammation. Programs, multiple programs are sequences. So once you load multiple programs here, you will have your sequence of programs. Alright. So we'll click on the control tab. You can read that. Generators. The pane. There's generator panel. All this stuff is important to read, so I'm just going to scroll quickly. If you get to your internet tab, you need to have a PopMail desk client required, you know, to use this. Then you got your errors tab, which will tell you what kind of errors you have. Later on, you'll see that down here in the lower left screen, You have a generator count, response errors, and the generator error number. In other words, if you have 5 generators and generator 5 is having a problem, it will say GE5. Alright. Signal testing, you want to start out when you can do remote mode. You want to start out with a signal test. This is how to do it. This is very important. The Windows warnings, you want to make sure that your PC doesn't go to sleep on you, and then it will, if it does, if it starts to sleep on you, then your generators will lose connection with the software, and therefore it'll just stay on one frequency and stop running. So you want to definitely go to your power options. There's a different video on that. You want to stop your Windows updates so it doesn't automatically reboot on you. And again, disconnect your communications with your generator. These are your treatment choices. This is very important to read. You know, which type of preset do you want to use, killing or healing? This tells you, basically if it's a pathogen, you kill it. If it's non-pathogenic, then you heal it. Which remote do you want to use, the Bio North or the Magnetic North? Pretty much, if you stick with the Bio North, the white remote, can't go wrong. Otherwise, you have to pay attention to how long you use the black remote. That's something you can get into later, but for a beginner, just use the white remote. You can't go wrong. Alright, this is the DNA sample. There's some tape that's provided to you. You can cut your fingernails in quarters just so they can lay a little bit flatter. Here is a DNA labels that is in the files section. It's dated July 20th. So if you click on the files section of the Facebook group, then all you got to do is download this, and you've got some really cool labels that you can cut out and use that slide into the remotes. I wanted to show you that. Okay, here's if you want to use saliva or buccal skin cells or blood or hair, here's the information for that. Which mode do you want to run, plasma, contact, or remote? You can read that independently. The database sets, or in Spectrum sweeps, that's important to know about. It's important to know about the spooky buttons, so this is a good page to read, 41. And, it's important here to know what all these buttons mean. Spooky know-how. One of the big errors that occurs with new users, we forget to allow generator overwrites, and it won't start properly. So now we go on to the tutorials. This is how to set up a remote Rife treatment. This will actually take you step by step to create a program and save it as a user preset. So you can read through that at your leisure. Okay, this is how to set up a contact Rife session. Setting up a contact program, and then you would save it as a user preset, so you can read through that as your leisure. This is the plasma Rife. This is how you would do it if you have the spooky central plasma device. You can read through that at your leisure. Okay, there's one thing that you need to be aware of as far as if you're using Spooky Central. There's a way you can protect the settings. It requires a square wave with 100% offset. So you can read page 57 and dedicate a generator to ensure that it does the square wave and the requirements. And when you do this, when you dedicate the channel to Spooky Central, then it will change the generator button to have bold print instead of fine print. So that's a telltale sign. Moving on, this is ad hoc Rife. That's for more advanced users. For a beginner, you can skip this section, but it's there. Alright, let's skip on. Let's keep going. Okay, here's your 3 modes. This will show you. We're on page 63 now. So you can read this at your leisure. you know, whether or not to choose plasma contact or remote mode. Okay, so this talks about using TeamViewer. If you're remote from your rig, you can remote control your rig. I don't use it, but some people do. If I travel, I take my physical equipment with me so I can manipulate it rather than trying to leave it connected to the internet connection and use TeamViewer, but it can be done, and that's this section. Um, let's share. It's talking about remote mode, and then, you know, 120 to 140 times equal to 6 to 7 of contact. So this is good to know. There's this contact remote, the Holland 11th harmonic. You can read briefly about that. It's actually a preset in the shell preset, so you can read about that here. The Schoon effect is also a preset in the shell presets. So you can read that about page 66. Using high frequencies, this isn't really all that important. This isn't important either. For a beginner, I'm talking about contact. That's not important. Here's the menu bar, page 74. This is good to read. You want to know what all these menus, buttons control. So you can read that at your leisure. If you want to set up your own custom program, you have your own frequencies that you want to create your own custom program, this is how to do it. Page 76 takes you step by step. You can get really complex with setting it up and choosing waveforms and blah blah blah, so you don't have to really worry about it as a beginner. I mean, if you really want to dig into that, this can kind of make your head spin a little bit if you're not feeling good, so don't worry about it. You know, you can just stick with your default dwell of 3 minutes and then pick a preset to control all your waveforms and what have you. It'll just keep it simple. You can email it to the cancer clinic in New Zealand if you want, if you have a Hotmail server set up. Alright, moving on. This is creating a carrier sweep. That's not important to know about when you're a beginner. Okay, we'll keep going. This is the database menu. That's good to know about. I'll keep scrolling. Here's the global menu button. We're up to page 89 now. Online menu. Page 92, the utilities menu. Yeah, that's good to know about. Moving along, this is the colloidal silver section. I'm not really concerned about making colloidal silver. If that's one of your primary focus issues, or you want to create colloidal silver, go to page 95 and take you step by step. Presets tab, that's important to know about. We're on page 96. Read that thoroughly. Tells you everything you need to know. The programs tab, read that thoroughly. You'll notice that on page 99 there's two particular sub-databases that require, or it is highly recommended that you use a specific preset, shell preset for that. That would be the Hulda Clark or the kilohertz frequency sub-database. You can use this specific preset for that. Moving on, this just gives you terminology, and it's really important to use the proper terminology when you're using Facebook so we know what you're talking about instead of talking about the thingamabob. You know, if you're really asking about this repeat sequence, don't call it a thingy, call it the repeat sequence field, you know. Okay, moving on. Also, this mentions the applied disintegrative factor. That has to do with the molecular weight database. You tick that if you want to remove a substance from your body. So that's important to know about. Moving on, settings tab. Signal settings. That's good to know about. Output shadowing. Don't worry about that one for starters. Okay, wobbles. Yeah, we can worry about that later. All this wobbling stuff, you can read about it, but it's not hugely important when you're first starting out. This stuff isn't important really. Well, kind of is, but not when you're first starting. So, okay, here's your control tab. You can read through that at your leisure. Talks about generator information. This is your reverse lookup. Once you do a biofeedback scan, you want to see what programs are going to be involved with what frequencies showed up. Eh, you know, I wouldn't worry about it for now. As a beginner, you know, it's just not something that you can need to have analysis paralysis with. Just let it go, and you can come back to this later. Alright, but this is how to do it. Biofeedback scan section is important to read if you want to do biofeedback. Probably the most frustrating thing that most new users try to do is a biofeedback scan. It's recommended to do, but to get everything in place properly, it's really challenging, and most new users have issues for whatever reason. There's multiple reasons it can occur, but read through this carefully, and there's certain sequences that have to occur. With the December 1st version, now we have a complete user guide basically that's built in within the software, the preset. And I'll show you, well, you'll be able to find that. Just go to the biofeedback section and look at the PDF file, and it'll give you, I think it's a 16-page information about how to do it properly, but it's also supplemented here. If you've got an erratic heart rate, you want to double the HRV tolerance. That's important to know about. Alright, moving on. This is, max BPM is trying to find killing frequencies. That's important to know about. Grade program is important to know about. Alright, so biofeedback is a very extensive section because there's many moving parts to it, if you will. These are the scanning tips, page 123. Pay attention to these before and after as well. These are the color coding of the generator buttons. So different color coding can tell you a lot. If you start seeing that the numerals are flashing from black to red, that means you have a problem with the generator. So, it's important to know what all these mean. That's page 124. Here's the system tab. Read through that at your leisure. It's important to know about. You have to tick the load molecular weight database on your system tab in order to have it available on your programs tab. You can also enable the system sounds when you're doing biofeedback. High CPU priority tells Windows to allocate most resources to Spooky 2. So that's an optional thing. If you have a high-powered computer, it's probably not necessary. If you have an older computer, then you will probably want to tick that. Okay, so moving on. The database is in use. This is the section, page 127, talks about the molecular weight database. And moving on, your internet tab, you have to have pop mail set up. Social network pane isn't that all critical. Errors tab, this will tell you any errors you have. Again, if you look at the bottom left hand part of your screen, this is more important to really pay attention to than your errors tab. If you start seeing response errors of 100 or whatever, that means there's some issues going on with communications, or you might have one specific generator that's giving you a problem. It'll show up here in this generator error part right here. So you can read about all that right here. Let's tell you what version. This is how to do a screenshot. If you want to post to Facebook, you can do a screenshot, take a picture of all your tabs. It's stored in your data folder. Spooky 2 data folder. You can put it on a flash drive. If you're not connected to the internet on your active rig, just copy it and paste it to your flash drive and post it to Facebook. That's the easiest way to do it. Okay, let's see. Moving on. Wobbles and feathering. That's not important as a beginner. I'm going to scroll. Inverse and seek is interesting, but not hugely important. It's just rely on your presets, you know, when you're first starting. You can come dig into this later. Alright, keep going. Yeah, it gets pretty technical here. Gonna make your head spin with all these spikes and waves and what have you. Alright, so let's see here. Yeah, this is a academic discussion about waveforms and frequencies that I'm sure electronics engineers just love to talk about, but most other people don't, so don't worry about it. But if you really want to dig into it, go for it. It does tell you, you know, what it's good for, you know. But there's a section I'll show you in a minute that kind of summarizes this, but this gets into the details. Waveform and offset, blah, 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 duty cycle. And skip that. Okay, this is a big one. Everybody, when they're first starting out, they say, okay, I did my signal test, it lit up red, and now I'm running a different program, and they're not lighting up, it must not be working in there. You know, yeah, they're working. If you do a signal test, you know, and you got your red lights on, you know, there's a 99.99% chance that you're not going to have a problem running different programs. What changes the behavior of the LED lights is explained here. You can read this in detail. It starts at page 157. Basically, this is how it works. How your LEDs respond to the signal depends on the frequency, the waveform, and the amplitude. So all of these are typically very different. And so that's why you're going to have different ways of the LEDs flashing. Everybody looks at that and go, oh no, it's not working. So know that this is an important section to read if you're really concerned about the way your LEDs light up on your remote. Okay? If you have lower amplitudes, the voltage won't be enough to light up the LEDs, and it doesn't look like they're lighting up at all. At very low amplitudes, they won't look like they're working at all. So if you drop it from 5 to 2, you're not going to light your LEDs. They just don't have the voltage. So don't fret over it. Just know that if you do your signal test, you're good to go. All right, remote and waveform. All right, more academic discussion, spectrum, we don't have to worry about for now. I'm going to keep scrolling. Multi-talented spooky. Here's your colloidal silver section. Starting on page 170. And I'm not going to worry about digging into that. If you're really into it, you can worry about that. Clark Zapper, that's not all that important to know about. Pest and Mold, you know, you can, if you really have an issue with a pest or mold situation in your house, you can come back and read that. But, you know, you can get a home care kit for $173, but you can also use that for, you know, treatment of yourself. But the home care kit is your super starter kit, if you want, so to speak. Alright, this is an academic discussion on how the universe works, and, you know, trying to figure out how lint gets into your belly button and all that stuff. Okay, but it's interesting, you know. Here's how Rife works. And you go into the, you know, Rife was really designed to be a destructive force of pathogens, but then it's been somewhat modified to where entrainment is possible with Rife technology, or it's kind of an amendment, so to speak. Golden rule of rifing, that's important to know about. Page 194, you can read that at your leisure. The Morgellons and Lyme protocol is designed to follow this pattern of killing off pathogens from smallest to largest. Alright, so here's your troubleshooting section. Only need to really dig into this if you have troubleshooting issues with trying to install drivers. Seems like XP is having trouble recognizing multiple drivers, but so seems like most of the troubleshooting happens with XP computers. So just to be aware of that. Alright, let's keep going. You know, again, you don't have to really dig into this unless you have driver installment issues. So we'll just briefly run over this. And, okay, keep going. Installing a database, you don't need to worry about that. Making waves, again, you've got some discussion about how things work from an electronics perspective. And, again, it's an academic discussion. However, what really is important is this one right here, page 218. This gives you a synopsis of what waveforms you can use. If, as a beginner, you're going to be using your built-in factory presets, so you don't have to worry about this. But later on, when you get to be an advanced user and you want to come in and modify it to do the square H-bomb instead of the plain square, then you can know why you would want to do that. You can read about this at your leisure, page 218. Serial numbers are not important at the moment, so we're back to the acknowledgement section of our core members of Spooky, and Chaffee Klein being one of our key members of the Facebook group, and John White, Echo Lee, Brian Yamamoto, Jeff Kaxer, Melly, Keith, Gwen, Jason, Jeffrey, Henrik, Manuel Malo, Jadron Margren, John Kane. The list goes on and on. So, alright, so that covers it, folks. That is the quickest synopsis I can do on a 228-page user guide, and I tried to highlight what you're going to see as probably most important to focus on when you're first starting out. Now I'm going to go back to page 1. I'm tired of scrolling. Okay. Alright, so folks, that's it for today. I hope you find this helpful to you, and I hope you are highly successful with your rifing, and best wishes. Thanks for watching.